All right. So today we'll be picking up from where we left off the last time, and we were covering question one of the comprehension specimen 2024. Hopefully, you guys remember what the text was. Obviously, we have it here, but right, I hope you remember what it was about in general. Okay, so question G. During his climb, part one, during his climb, Mo discovered a problem which he had not seen when he was on the ground. What was the problem? Now, this question is from wherever ahead of wherever we left off. So we left off at line 34. So let's go to the text. That means over here. So we need to read for the answer somewhere from here, I guess. So you can read that part of the text. In fact, no. The answer is here in this paragraph. So read that part, let me know when you find the answer. Should be straightforward, simple. Right. Bakir, have you found it? Okay, so what should be the answer? Could you tell me? Bakir? Saying there was a gap between the two trees. Okay. And Bakir, I would like you to okay, now what did wait, let me go to the question over here. What did Mo decide to do to solve the problem? Again, 1 mark. They've given you more lines over here. So perhaps, right, the answer is a bit longer, but still one valid point is required. So the text, again, you probably have read that part, right? Do you think it's in these lines, the answer? I don't look for the answer just yet. Just, tell me whether you think the answer to part two of the question is in these 4 lines. Right, then we read ahead, right? So read the next paragraph and right, tell me what you find. What did Mo do to solve the problem? Decide to do. Bakar, you haven't found it yet? Let's take a look. Right. Trying not to think about how high up he was, more focused his mind on the problem. The gap was really not very large, he thought. He could have let go of the small redwood and make a leap up into the big tree and grasp a branch with his hands like a circus performer catching the bar of a swinging trapeze. He had to jump high, or his body wouldn't clear the branches of the smaller tree, and he'd get tangled and would fall. Right? So, what is he thinking of doing over here? He's talking about making a leap and jumping high. What is he trying? What is he thinking about? Right? It says over here, make a leap up into the big tree and grasp a branch. Right? Had to jump high. So right now he's on the smaller tree. What is he thinking of doing? Amariza, what is your response? Right. Bakar, do you follow the thought process for the answer? The question? I was asking, do you understand how we got the answer for this question? Right? So he's thinking about jumping from one tree to the other. All right. Now, finally, question H. This is a using your own words question. Right? So you have to rephrase, but how do you need to go about this? And so far in the papers, question H, the the type of question is pretty standard, right? The ones we have so far from the different sessions. So explain using your own words Marwood's different feelings about more climbing nameless. Okay. Give three details from anywhere in the text to support your answer. This one's easy, right? Now it is both implicit and explicit. How is it implicit? The feelings are not given, right? So, but the details from where you're going to support your answer are given. So, what you can do, you can take a look at the text and you can see they're asking about Margot, right? So, the other kid in the story. And the reason I say this one is easy is because he only has three lines in the entire text. So, it makes it easy to, you know, uh, get those details that they're asking for. Here's one of them. Then here's the next. And then if we carry on, right, here is the third, I believe, right? So Marwood only has three lines. So the supporting text that they're looking for, you don't have to scan through the entire, uh, well, the entirety of the text. Uh, in other papers, that is what you would have to do. So that makes it a bit more challenging. Now, we've gotten the three details, right? So half our work is done, but it's 3 marks. So you get 1 mark for a detail with a feeling, right? So that combination is going to give you 1 mark, and you need three feelings with three details. So let's take a look at this at different points, and let's think of the different feelings perhaps that we can associate with Marwood. So the first one, you aren't going to try to climb, are you? Asked Marwood incredulously. What feeling do you understand from this, and then what word would you use to describe that feeling? We're doing this one by one. So, what word would you use to describe that feeling? Any ideas? Like whatever's coming to mind. Let me know. Come on, anyone? Any idea? Barker? Could you repeat that? Could you repeat your response? Disbelief. We could use disbelief, yes, right? That he's asking, you aren't going to climb it, are you? Right? So he's in disbelief that Mo is actually thinking about it. So we could use that as a feeling. Uh, One of the suggested feelings for this line is it is disbelief basically, right? He can't believe that Mo is so yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Okay, so that's one. That you understand how we got there, Amariza? Okay. If there's at any point anything you do not understand, right, you can obviously just pop in and ask. Okay, the second evidence that we have, I really don't think that's very smart. Marwood warned from below. So, what kind of feeling does he have at this point? Uh, right, scared would work. Amara, doubtful could also work. Yes, for this line, he was doubtful. He was scared. So we can possibly associate two feelings with this one because he says, I really don't think that's very smart. So there's a bit of doubt and there's a bit of fear as well. So we could work, we could use either. In fact, right, what you could do is because you have two different feelings, you can use this one text and associate two different feelings with it. It might just work. But since we have three pieces of evidence from the text, we want to try the third one as well, just to be safe. Okay, now keep in mind the question over here is asking you specifically to give three details. So you don't want to give four because, as I mentioned in our introductory class, that will cause problems. If you give four, the examiner will only check the first three, right or wrong, doesn't matter, just the first three. And if there's a fourth, you're not going to get extra marks for it. It will end up putting you in a bit of tricky situation because if you mention a fourth point which contradicts any one of the earlier points 1 2 3, then you will lose whatever mark you may have got, right? This is called the list rule. It's not given in the mark scheme. For English it is there in science mark schemes, and it is more applicable there, but it is also applicable here, right? So if they're mentioning a particular number of responses, then you stick to that. But since we're practicing, right, we want to try this one as well. So I can't watch, Marwood shouted furiously from below and closed his eyes. He dreaded hearing a scream followed by a meaty thud. So, what kind of feeling can you associate with this line? Uh, yes, we could, but right, we already use fear or frightened or scared. Now, if you're using the same feeling again for a different line, it won't work. They want something different, even though technically it's correct, but as a response, you want something different because it mentions. I'll just get to you, Bakar. He mentioned it mentioned the word dreaded. He dreaded hearing a scream followed by a meaty thud. So that is frightfulness, right? Fear and fright and scared. So yes, angry. Bakar, you said angry. Why would you say angry? He said it out. He shouted furiously. Yes, right. So obviously the words over here have hints, and so saying it furiously, there might be a hint of anger in Marwood, right, at towards Mo, as to why he's putting his life in danger. Anything else? Anything else you can think of? Amariza? Right now, one of the suggested feelings for this line is pessimism. So he felt pessimistic. He wasn't hopeful, right? And why? Because I can't watch. He closed his eyes and he dreaded hearing a scream, which means he wasn't at all thinking that it would actually work. Okay, right. Now, with that done, let's move on to question two. And these are all the ones where it's writer's meaning and effects and all of that. First off, Acha, now not that it matters as much, honestly, but because they're giving you the line reference, but the way the comprehensions, the text, the flow of the story is that somewhere perhaps through half or more than half, depending, right? You have the text that's related to question one, which are the regular comprehension questions, so to speak, and then followed by that is part of the text which deals with question two, right? So part of the text dealing with question two is right. This may be a bit earlier than this. Let's see where it's starting off from. It does take line 45, so that's where it's starting off from. So here's the question. Read this extract from the text. He felt gravity go to zero. The world stopped. Mo watched the branch of the large redwood approach in slow motion and saw his fingers extend towards it. What does the writer want to suggest to us about the situation at this point in the story? Now, like if you want me to go to the text, sure, but right for context. Otherwise, the lines are right here. In fact, I will go to the text. So, what does the writer want to suggest to us about the situation at this point in the story? All right, it starts from here. In the top of the tree, Mo let go and jumped. So that is the context, right? And then all of this. So, what is the writer trying to tell us about this particular scene? The situation at this point in the story. Anything? Anyone? Anything? Right. So the situation, you could say it's intense. Instead of like saying intense, you can say it's a tense situation. Uh, right? It says, everything in slow motion. He saw his hands reaching out, his fingers towards the branch, right? And so there are a number of possible answers to this, right? A number of possible ways we can reason as to explain this particular scene or this particular situation in the story. So it is tense, it is critical, it is dramatic, right? The way the writers expressing it, all the slow motion and everything, gravity going to zero. So there's a dramatic moment. Uh, there is danger involved, right? Because he's in midair at this point. Uh, right? So there's potential for something going wrong. So any one of these would work. And there are other suggestions in the mark scheme, obviously, right? But any one of these could work for this piece of text for the response to this question. Next, explain why the writer uses the word stronger rather than strong. So here it's a bit of a grammatical touch to this question, right? Stronger is comparative, right? Whereas using the word strong is absolute, right? So explain why the writer uses the word stronger uh, rather than strong in the expression a stronger branch. So let's go to that line. It's line 49. So still the same text, part of the text, right? And climb the next 3 precarious meters onto a stronger branch. So why did the writer use stronger instead of just saying onto a strong branch? Any ideas? Hello? Anyone? Barker, nothing for you either? Interesting. So, right, the word stronger, as I mentioned, I gave you a hint. It is right, on a comparative degree rather than just saying something strong, right? So, uh, saying that it's a strong branch is sort of in absolute terms that it is just strong. Now, obviously, it depends on what is it strong for, but not going into the details, just focusing on the the implication of the word. And so, when you say something is strong, then you mean that it has strength to do what it's supposed to do, right? Whereas when you're saying stronger, you're using the comparative degree, and so it is better than something else, right? And so when you look at this text, right, he's jumping towards the branch on the large redwood, nameless. There was a jerk, and he found himself hanging from the branch he was aiming for, by both hands, bouncing with his feet kicking the air. Swinging hand over hand, he got himself over to the trunk. So now he's on the branch that he caught and climbed the next precarious 3 precarious meters onto a stronger branch. So the branch he moved to was relatively stronger than the one he landed on. Or you could give the reverse argument that the branch he landed on was weak as compared to the one he climbed up to. It's pretty straightforward, actually, right? Or he moved to a branch that was right stronger and therefore safer to be on as compared to the one he landed on. Does that make sense? Barker? Okay. All right. A question with impression, right? So question C is with the impression, question D is with the effect. What two impressions does the writer want to convey to the reader in the sentence? There was foliage everywhere, above, below, and on all sides, layers upon layers of leaves like tents within tents. Right? And then, right before we answer this, because I want to make a comparison and clarify how to attempt these two different types of questions. Question D is read this sentence from the text climbing upward slowly and steadily through the labyrinth, more lost sight of the ground. What effect does the writer suggest about the tree by using the word labyrinth to describe it? Okay, so what I want to highlight over here, and I will highlight that, is impressions and effect, right? What happens with impressions is, can I do that? I want to add some text. Just type over here. Okay, so what impression means, I'm not used to this keyboard, is right what sort of scene that writer creates in the reader's mind. For some reason, it's not adding those spaces. Right, so it's hmm. Okay, anyway, right, so what kind of scene is the writer creating in the reader's mind? So that's you, with his particular choice of words. Whereas in the next question, where they're using, right, what effect does the writer want to suggest? And so that is more, I mean, they're similar, but that question focuses more on the use of a particular word in the text. So over here they say, right, what effect does the writer suggest about the tree by using the word labyrinth? And so they highlight, well, you know, and as I am highlighting, right, they focus on a word, labyrinth. And so here, right, it means why the writer used a particular word. So, right, and what do they want to convey about that part of the text? All right. So, keeping that approach in mind, let's attempt these two questions. So, the part C, what two impressions? So, they're asking for two, it's 2 mark question. So, you need to, what two impressions does the writer want to convey to the reader in the sentence? There was foliage everywhere, above, below, and on all sides, layer upon layer of leaves, like tents within tents. Okay, and that is line 51 to 52. So we are over here. Now you can read the rest of the text if you want for understanding what they're hinting towards, what's the context, and then if you, right, I mean, could uh, think quickly about what response you could give for this. Anyone? Any ideas? Oh, come on. Ah. Uh, that, like, wouldn't quite fit here. That is something that would work for a question that comes later. So, right, I'm giving you that hint, but not so much over here. Right now, if you just, right, just think about this. Right, again, this is an impression question. So, right, what scene is the writer trying to? So just imagine. Right, take these words. Obviously, you need to understand what the words are saying. So there was foliage everywhere. Foliage is all the greenery, all the leaves, right? And they explain that above, below, and on all sides, layer upon layer of leaves. So they do explain what that is. So it was above, below, on all sides, layer upon layer of leaves. right? So if you just think of that scene, right, in a tree, obviously, we probably haven't climbed a tree that has that kind of thick greenery, and right, so you don't know what it's like, but maybe just imagine it. And so, right, the leaves everywhere, the lots will completely surround, right? That if that comes to mind, then that is one possible point you can write. What impression is the writer trying to convey? That, right, Mo is completely surrounded by leaves everywhere, right, in all directions. So that's one point. Uh, then, right, they mention tents within tents. So, what would you use a tent for? Right? Again, you need to think about the meaning and what it's conveying and the implications of the words. So, a tent is used as shelter, right? And obviously, when you're outside of your home, whether you're camping, whether you're traveling, maybe in a desert, right? Under normal conditions, you wouldn't be needing a tent. So, obviously, right, in an irregular situation, so to speak. And so perhaps, right, the leaves are providing a sense of protection, right, or a shelter, perhaps, right, because they're uh, comparing them to tents within tents, right, and so that's what tents are for, right? They are a shelter. Even if you're camping for fun, it is shelter. And then one thing, perhaps logically, right, if right, Mo's aim is to climb. And at this point, he is completely surrounded by layers upon layers of leaves. So that could possibly make it difficult to get through, right? And so that would make his climbing or movement difficult through the layers of leaves. And so that gives us 3 points. Now, remember, you only need two. In such cases, right, like in earlier question where we were talking about Margot's feelings, where you have more than the expected number of points for the answer. If you do think of more than the number they're asking, obviously write down only as much as they're asking, but also write down the points that you are more confident. Right, so right now you've got three. How many are you confident with? Well, I'm very confident, or reasonably confident with two of them. I'm a bit unsure for the third one. I think it's right, but I'm not completely sure. And so leave that, right? Go with the one that you feel more confident about. Whether it's right or wrong, we're practicing. Again, we don't know what's going through the examiner's head. We don't know exactly what they're expecting. That is a problem if I use the word for it. But, right, go with your gut. In situations like these, go with your gut, right? The one you're feeling more confident about. Yeah. And if it turns out to be wrong, at least, during our practice sessions, then so be it, right? Learning. We can always discuss, oh, well, why that wasn't the right move, right? The right trail of thought. And then so we can train our gut to be better. All right, that's done. I'm hoping to get done with question two as well. So tomorrow we can dive into the summary. So, read the sentence from the text: climbing upwards slowly and steadily through the labyrinth, Mo lost sight of the ground. What effect does the writer suggest about the tree by using the word labyrinth to describe? Obviously, you need to, for this question, you need to have an understanding of the word labyrinth and its context. And if not, then you could possibly, uh, right, try and figure it out from, right, the insert from the text. Maybe you can get an idea. So this is line 53 to 54. So here it is, the word labyrinth. And so if I just highlight all of this, right, maybe it will give you some more context of the word, and then, right, what can you give a response? Why did the writer use the word labyrinth to describe this part of the tree? Right. Any ideas? Hello? Hmm. Okay, so if we, you know, just focus on the main point, if you highlight the main point of your response, then the word labyrinth could hint towards that at that point the tree seemed like a maze. Okay, so yes, that is a possible response for labyrinth. So we have one valid point. Bakar, what do you have? Could you repeat that? Sorry, a bit slower. Repeat your response, but a bit slower. Okay, so uh, right, you've also mentioned that it's like a maze, so that's the same thing. Entering another world. In this case, one of the suggested points is that it seems like he's in another world. So that would work. Yes, so you've got 2 points. Now, a labyrinth, right? It is maze-like, so you could say that is uh, saying that maze-like is one thing, right? And then mazes are complex, so you could talk about the complexity of the branches and the leaves and everything around, right? And because of that, so that's the second point. The third point, that it's confusing to move through, okay, or it's hard to find your way through it. So that could be again, you just need to, but still, right? So that's the third point. And like being in other words, so they've sort of, because it's a labyrinth, so it's like mythical, like a heroic quest, right? And he's trapped and like he's like in another world. So that's the line they've taken for the fourth possible point. If right, you want, you can think on like those terms as well. Okay, now we're almost done with question two. The last part, right? Question 2E, worth 3 marks. Now, how does this work? Identify one example. So, again, just one from the text below of how the writer uses language effectively to convey Mo's feelings after Mo has lost sight of the ground. They give you this text, and right, they're asking you to pick out one example. That means you obviously have choice, right? It's not that, oh, there's only one correct answer, no more. And so I'd give you a hint. And so there's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, right? There's seven possible examples that you can pick out as the correct answer, right? As the correct example. And so it's worth 3 marks, and 1 mark is for an appropriate example from this text. And then 2 marks are for explaining, as it says, explanation, how that example conveys most feelings after he has lost sight of the ground. So it's not just explaining. the example itself, but you should link that to how Mo is feeling at this point, right? So you can have different examples, obviously, but your explanation needs to uh, link to whichever one you pick. Right, so go ahead, read the text. I don't need to go to the main text for this. You have it in front of you. Pick out an example. Again, right over here, because there's more than one correct answer, possible correct answer, don't try to go for an example that seems, fancy. Pick one that you feel you can explain easily. Okay, there's nothing to impress. So pick one that you feel you can explain easily and go for that. So I'll give you 2 minutes maybe to think about this, the whole thing, and then I'll ask you for a response. All right. So any responses? Bakar? Okay, Amarza, you go first. Which example have you picked out? Senses were overwhelmed by the impression of life all around. Okay, that is a correct example to pick. Now, how would you link that to his feelings? What do you think he's feeling based on this? Just that? That's just one point. You need two. Okay, Amariz, I'll come back to you. Bakar, what's the example you've picked out? Okay, so same example. How would you explain this? Okay, so he was shocked and and feeling confused by seeing all that different life around him. Okay, now, right, I would want to first of all, confusion wouldn't fit so well over here. It's about overwhelmed. So the word overwhelmed means that there's something that's too much for you to handle, right? If you're feeling overwhelmed by work, for example, that means that you feel that there's too much and you don't have enough time, or you don't have the skill, or you don't have the resources, or the help that you need, or whatever the reason you're feeling overwhelmed with work is, right? Or you're feeling overwhelmed with the responsibilities, so you think the responsibility is too much, right? And so overwhelmed basically means that you have a feeling that something is too much for you. Okay, in that side, it's not like you're feeling overwhelmed with chocolate, that there's too much chocolate to eat. That's not how it works. Okay, so obviously context where overwhelmed will be used. So his senses were overwhelmed. That means his senses were, uh, there was just too much to process. What do the senses do? They process information, right, in the world around us. And so, right, he was unable, his senses were unable to keep up with, and process all the different things that he was experiencing, right? So instead of confusion, that's what I would say. And also, right, it's not so much, I mean, shock, but right, not shock as in more like we could say surprised, right? Not the surprise, it's your birthday kind of surprise, but surprise as in I'm not expecting something. Okay, so we could take it down that path. And so, right, to explain it further, uh, right? his senses were overwhelmed. So it was right, it was the kind of experience he wasn't expecting. So on the surprise note, it was the kind of experience that he wasn't expecting at all. And so right, he wasn't able to process everything that he was sensing. He was seeing, he was touching, feeling, right, maybe smelling. Obviously there's a sense over there. uh, he maybe felt defenseless against this sort of, you know, this information that was just coming towards him, right? So that's how we could go on to explain this particular example. Do both of you follow, right, how I took that example and how I went on to explain and link it with his feelings? Any questions as to how that trail of thought worked, Bakar? Is it clear? Acha, now that is just one example, right? The other possible examples, I'll quickly go over them and then we'll conclude today's class. I think we're short on time as well. Yeah, we just have 5 minutes, so, right? So other examples you could have picked is as if he was moving through a membrane, right? And so the explanation for that is that he was moving through a barrier, he was breaking a wall, he was hatching into a new world. The next example is entering another word. So that in itself is an example. How would you explain that? Discovering something new, right, into a new space, exploring adventure. That's what you would do to explain that. Then we did senses were overwhelmed. The next example you could pick is flaky gray, green, brownish plants, right? So lots of colors, lots of, new vegetation that he was unfamiliar with and he couldn't identify, right? And colors were sort of dull, right? Not like bright colors maybe that he was used to. Uh, the next example, possible example you could have picked is drippy, frizzy, stringy, and hairy, right? And so he couldn't, like, again, the way they've gone to explain this is it's like, all sorts of this living mass, this vegetation of all sorts, and he's perhaps struggling to describe how it actually is, or he's, again, processing and having difficulty with that. And it's so hairy and stringy, so it's thin, it's long, it's everywhere, it's a mass. Lace work of branches is the second last example they've given. So lace work, right? And so it's all crisscrossed. You could, because it's lace work, it could be delicate and beautiful, right? As if, someone crafted, it's a craftsmanship. That is an explanation. And then the last one they've given is glowed with varied shades of green. And so that, right, it's not so much as a feeling for him, I guess, but right, so it was radiating light and it was like a sense of warmth. Now, you might contest that, well, some of these aren't talking about his feelings, and sure, like I said, go with one that you feel confident. Okay. Now I will stop here. Class is about to end as well in 2 minutes. If there's any questions, you can reach me via WhatsApp. Otherwise, tomorrow, right, we're done with question one, which is the comprehension. And this was our first go, so hopefully we learned and we'll do better next time. Every text is new anyway, so always learning. And tomorrow we will then start with the summary. All right, so I'll see you guys next class, inshallah. All right, Allah.